Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is John J. Gaming on the mic, coming at you guys with the full off-season recap here in the inaugural season of the ACSA here on Maximum Football 2020. We are here and we're going to have a very exciting episode for you guys. Got a lot to cover. First, we're going to take a look at the season results real quick to check out the major games that happened over the course of the ACSA this season. We're also going to take a look at the season awards that were passed out within Maximum Football 2020, make that known to you guys as well. And then on top of that, give you guys not only a recruit information if you guys want to have custom recruits for the top 100, but also I'm going to display the full recruiting rankings for the ACSA, so all 130 teams that will be included. It's going to be extremely exciting. And then cap things off with the coaching carousel. We're going to choose a new team to at least recruit some guys, because that's what we do when we control user team. We do that in order to recruit guys, and recruiting is not automated, so I have to do that. But that being said, it's going to be a very exciting off-season episode for you guys. So if you're excited for it, do me a favor and please smash that like button, as well as hit subscribe if you have to be brand new to the channel, and like what you see as well. Let's go ahead and start with the season results here in this ACSA series. So starting things off with the review of the inaugural season of the ACSA, we'll actually start off with the conference championship game, starting with the National Athletic Conference here in Maximum Football 2020. Alfred Tech and Alfred the Great were the two teams that ended up playing against each other in this conference championship game. A game that actually went to overtime, so we needed overtime to decide who was going to win this thing. Alfred Tech gets to go out on top. They won this game 23-17 in overtime, and Alfred Tech used the opportunity to go to the PX1 Sports Bowl, whereas Alfred the Great, despite the fact that they were in the National Athletics Conference Championship game, they were actually left out of bowl season completely, so they did not get a chance at bowl season. But still, really good for Alfred the Great to go ahead and go to a conference championship game. Not a lot of teams certainly can say that, so I'm sure they'll take that momentum going forward. As that, we'll move on to the Atlantic Shore Conference Championship game, where the Warwick Rebels defeated the Southeast Coast of Florida by a final score of 31-22. The Warwick Rebels, they used this as an opportunity, basically tune themselves up for the college football playoff, and they were going to get in, I feel like, regardless of if they won or lost. But the Rebels used this as an opportunity, to solidify that #1 seed and made it pretty far. Whereas Southeastern Coast of Florida, they didn't win this game, but they did get to go to the Lee Crawler Bowl, where they ended up playing Alabama Hoover. After that, we had the Big Southwest Conference Championship game, and Southern New Mexico could have gotten in with a win. If they won this game, they would have made it to college football playoff, but actually got blown out 54-15 by the Sugarland State Cowboys. Although Sugarland State, they did not get to move up. They stayed actually at number 9. Ended up playing Texas Catholic in the Soden Bowl. But Southern New Mexico, they still went to a very good bowl game after this. They went to the California Classic Bowl to play against Oaksterdam. Following the Big Southwest Conference Championship game, we had the Big North Conference Championship game, where the Iroquois Eagles defeated the Bluffton Tech Fighting Muskrats 33-16. Iroquois did not get to go to college football playoff despite winning a major college football championship at the conference level, but they did play spoiler for Bluffton Tech. Bluffton Tech was in a win-and-in situation, and unfortunately the cookie did not crumble their way, so they fell to number 7 and went to go play in the Phenom Elite Bowl, where coincidentally that's where the Iroquois Eagles also were on top of that. Then we have the Stars and Stripes Conference Championship, where the Oxford Chargers played against the Spring Creek Moose. The Spring Creek Moose, came out on top on this one, winning 27-13, and used this as an opportunity to go to, actually both these teams went to bowl season, and the Darn Jaguars as well. So a very good group of 5 conference that we witnessed right here. You love to see it. Over in the Midwest Conference Championship, we have the Kearney College Elks and the Central Tech Falcons face off against each other. Kearney College, in what was a tough battle, ended up winning 18-13. However, that being said, neither of these teams made it to a bowl game, and actually the Midwest Conference was the only conference to not have any teams go to bowl season. Lake Ozago played up against Pacific Tech in the Rocky Mountain Conference, and Lake Ozago won convincingly, winning by a final score of 41-12. Lake Ozago used this as an opportunity to solidify themselves in the college football playoff, whereas Pacific Tech, their season ended after this. They actually did not get to go bowling. Speaking of the college football playoff, the Big Pacific Conference turned into a play-in game, whereas the winner of this game got to go to the playoff, and Seattle and Oaksterdam, it was a rematch from the regular season. They played each other very closely, much closer than the first time that these two teams met, and Seattle did still come out on top 16-15, which gave them the final slot to make it into the college football playoff, playing up against Oaksterdam, who was relegated to the California Classic Bowl, and play against Southern New Mexico from the Big Southwest. In what was arguably the toughest conference in college football, the Super South Conference Championship game pitted the University of Alabama Hoover, and they went and go play against Capital of Tennessee. Capital of Tennessee, they win this game convincingly. They win by a final score of 34-18. Capital of Tennessee using this game as a ticket puncher to go to the college football playoff, whereas Alabama Hoover, they actually got to go to the League Crawler Bowl and played against the southeastern coast of Florida. Then finally, for the last conference championship game, we have the VCU Saints, who came in ranked number 21 in the nation, playing against the Northern Virginia Angels. Northern Virginia wins 30-6, but Virginia Christian got to go to a bowl game. They got to go to the PlaybookSocial.com Bowl, whereas Northern Virginia, with an 8-5 record, does not get a bowl invitation. Arguably the biggest snub in the ACSA, given that they won a conference championship up there with the Kearney College Elks. Very unfortunate. Hopefully Maximum Football addresses this in the future with future titles, or even with an update to this game. That would be pretty cool as well. With the conference championship games now officially out of the way, we'll go ahead and take a look now at the results from bowl season. Here we have the Darden Jaguars defeating the Wentzville Vikings by a final score of 21-20 in the MGN Sports Bowl. After that, we have the Traveler's Choice Inn and Suites Bowl, sponsored by Traveler's Choice, where the Clinton College Indians, they played against Florida Tech, and Florida Tech from the Atlantic Shore came out on top here, defeating their Big Southwest Conference opponent 31-26 in this bowl game. In what turned out to be a more defensive matchup, the Hebrew University of California played against the Burlington Vipers from the National Athletic Conference and won this game by a final score of 17-7 in the Wild West Barbecue Shack Bowl. Following that defensive-minded bowl game, we had more defense on the mind as the Lincoln Fighting Salt and Phoenix State Flames both played each other pretty close. They each had opportunities to win the game, but the Lincoln Fighting Salt was able to be the last man standing and win this bowl game by a final score of 16-13. After that, we had the Sim Sports Gaming Bowl that had featured the Vienna Patriots play against the University of Mid-Atlantic, home of the Crabs from the Atlantic Shore Conference. And the Vienna Patriots came out on top here. They win this game 17-12 against their Power 5 opponent. You'll love to see it from the Patriots of Vienna University. After that, we had the OperationSports.com Bowl, where VC Bio Dream played against the Iowa Tech Vikings. One of the more exciting bowl matchups in the early portion of the bowl season schedule, and it certainly lived up to that billing, as the Bio Dream did end up defeating the Iowa Tech Vikings, winning 35-27. Up next, we have the Gaming Tailgate Bowl, where we had the Kent Colonials from the Atlantic Shore Conference play against the Oxford Chargers, representing four of the Stars and Stripes, and it was the Oxford Chargers, despite being a bigger underdog in this game, they end up winning this thing 36-28, defeating another Power 5 opponent. Speaking of Power 5 versus Group of 5 teams matching up against each other, we have the Indiana Fulton Whitetails representing the Big North Conference playing against the Spring Creek Moose in the Train Bowl, sponsored by Train Cybersecurity, Career, and Technical Education. And in this bowl game, the Whitetails win what was the most high-scoring bowl game in the inaugural bowl season, putting up 58 points and cruising to a 58-42 win. This was a game where it could have easily been a lot wider, but Spring Creek, they did try to come back. It was 41-17 at some point, but shout out to Spring Creek for making it a little bit closer at the very least. But the Whitetails ended up winning this bowl game still. Following the Train Bowl, we do have the PX1 Sports Bowl, where the National Athletic Conference champion in the Alfred Tech Bulls played against the Hawassa Chiefs and narrowly won 21-20. The Alfred Tech Bulls winning both their conference championship game and their bowl game. Alfred Tech with some great momentum going into the second season of the ACSA. Following the PX1 Sports Bowl, we have the Ryan Moody Bowl, where in a defensive slugfest, it was very sloppy early on, but Mississippi A&M, they found their rhythm on offense first and used that to defeat California Calabasas by a final score of 34-18, representing well for the Super South Athletic Conference. And now we start getting into the top 25 matchups in bowl season. Starting sort of with this one, South Alabama State. They were the first team outside the top 25, ranked number 26 in the nation. They played against the number 25 team in the nation, Chattanooga Tech, and the Fighting Bass defeat the Hyenas 19-9 in the Trident Mega Bowl. Up next, we have the Coastal Alabama Waves coming in ranked number 24 in the nation, play against the Detroit State Pit Bulls, coming in ranked number 23, and it was the Pit Bulls turning around and defeating their Super South Conference opponent, winning the Rod Pearson Show Bowl by a final score of 27-12. In one of the most defensive-minded matchups in the ACSA Bowl season, we had the PlaybookSocial.com Bowl. It was messy, it was ugly, but it was the Virginia Christian Saints coming out on top, defeating the Mavericks of David Crockett by a final score of 12-11. After that, we have a little bit more offense in the Soden Brand Bowl, and it was the Central Georgia A&M Bulldogs defeating the Little Rock Yellow Jackets by a final score of 29-9. It was another case of two teams from the same conference ending up playing each other. Following the Stilo Brand Bowl, we have the Good Life Bowl between the Eastern Pennsylvania Beavers and the Herbert Hoover Old Glory. It was the Beavers that ended up on top. They win this game 34-23. The Beavers representing well for the Big North Conference. After that, we had another instance where two teams from the same conference. The third time that we've seen this already. This time it's Southfield and DeKalb A&M going to the Puerto Rico Bowl to face off against each other. Matter of fact, these two teams, I'm pretty sure, played against each other in the regular season, and it was Southfield that ended up winning this game 34-29. And one did turn out to be a pretty exciting bowl game to watch, despite the fact that these were two teams from the same conference. After that, we have the Scout Scoops Bowl between the Amazon Delivery Boys and the Hayes Indians, and Amazon, they came through with the Amazon Prime winning 42-30 against Hayes College. You're not doing well for the Big Southwest. Then we have the League Crawler Bowl, and this was the last bowl matchup that did not have teams that were in the top 10 final ACSA poll. And the University of Alabama Hoover, they played against the southeastern coast of Florida, and the Piranhas actually pulled an upset in this one. 35-29 was a well-played game by the Piranhas, and they deserved to win that League Crawler Bowl, even though they did not get to win their conference championship game against the Rebels of Warwick. Now we have the top 10 bowl game matchups, basically your New Year's 6 equivalent. And the first one we had is the Soden Bowl, which featured Texas Catholic and Sugar Land State. It was a very close game. These two teams actually played each other in the regular season. It was a lot more offensively minded in the regular season than we saw in this bowl game, but Texas Catholic, the result is still the same. They beat Sugar Land State once again, this time doing it in multiple possessions, winning by a final score of 31-17. Then we have the Phenom Elite Bowl, where Bluffton Tech does end up getting its revenge on the Iroquois Eagles. Bluffton Tech, they win 30-16 in winning the Phenom Elite Bowl. Finally, for the final bowl game before, these were the last two teams that were kept out of the college football playoff. Number 5 and number 6 playing up against each other. Southern New Mexico, they faced off against the Amsterdam Reefers in a battle for basically the 5th place game, and a defensive-minded matchup. This is what we usually see from an Amsterdam football game. Amsterdam this time doing just enough to win. They win by a final score of 13-9. And now we have ourselves the college football playoff. These were the final 4 teams, to compete for the national championship game here in the ACSA. The first semifinal matchup was not very close whatsoever. Shout out to Seattle for making it to college football playoff, but once they got there, they didn't really do much of anything. The Warwick Rebels won convincingly, winning by a final score of 38-3. Meanwhile, in the second semifinal game, it was a lot more competitive, a lot more defensive-minded, as the Capital of Tennessee Bulldogs, they defeat the Lake Ozago Ironmen 11-8. A very closely contested game. Reminded me of when Northern Virginia played Capital of Tennessee towards the beginning of the season. And Lake Ozago, they almost pulled the upset. They represented well for the Rocky Mountain Conference, but they ended up being defeated in the semifinal. So that does leave the national championship game between the Capital of Tennessee Bulldogs and the Warwick Rebels. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that while Warwick won convincingly, they did lose their starting quarterback, and they did not come back. He did not come back for the championship game, so it was the backup quarterback in there in the championship game against the Capital of Tennessee Bulldogs, and the Bulldogs took advantage of that. They win this game by a final score of 28-18. So congratulations to the Capital of Tennessee Bulldogs. You are the inaugural ACSA national champion here at Maximum Football 2020. Congratulations to all of these 4 teams to make it to the inaugural playoff. They will forever be remembered in ACSA history. Over on my Discord, I encourage you guys to check that out. Link is in the description down below. So now that we got the individual bowl results now completely out of the way, let's go ahead now and take a look at the bowl records for each conference for this inaugural season here in the ACSA. And there's definitely some winners and losers in this conference. You'll notice first and foremost that the Midwest Conference is not listed. That's not because I forgot about them, but they actually did not have a single team get a bowl invitation. That's despite the fact that Kearney College, they won the Midwest Conference Championship game, and Central Tech, was that runner-up, also made a conference championship appearance. So definitely a rough time for the Midwest Conference right now. But with that being said, though, 2 conferences that did stand out was the Big North and the Super South Conference. Both of those teams finished 4-2 in terms of bowl records, and that's not accounting for the bowl games where 2 teams from the same conference actually were matched up against each other. I did not count those games. So Super South, they get the slight edge over the Big North in my opinion, because they have the national champion in the Capital of Tennessee Bulldogs. Meanwhile, the Big North, they showed out pretty well as well. They had some very good wins, including Eastern Pennsylvania beating Herbert Hoover, and then they had multiple teams in the Puerto Rico Bowl and the Phenom Elite Bowl as well, which is nice to see. Iowa Tech also almost beating Savio. That also sets these 2 conferences apart. That game in the OperationSports.com Bowl between Savio and Iowa Tech. Savio did narrowly win that game against the Vikings of Iowa Tech, so that also sets them apart as well. Over in the Midwest Conference, though, probably the biggest loser is the Big Southwest. Yes, they did have 5 teams make it to bowl games, not accounting for Texas Catholic and Sugar Land State, who did end up playing each other in the Southern Bowl. Other than that, the 5 teams that played from the Big Southwest Conference, all of them lost. They went 0-5 this bowl season, and that includes, Hayes College. They ended up losing to Amazon in the Scout Scoops Bowl. We also had Phoenix State. They lost in the Sap Soda Bowl. Wentzville and Croydon, they respectively lost in the MGN Sports and Traveler's Choice Bowl games as well on top of that. And then David Crockett, who was ranked number 22 in the nation, they lose to Virginia Christian in the PlaybookSocial.com Bowl. So definitely a
definitely a really bad bowl season for the Big Southwest. Granted, they did get most of their teams in to bowl season. 7 out of 10 teams did make it, but unless they played each other in a bowl game, they did not win those bowl games. So not a good look for that conference whatsoever. Now, there are also a couple of conferences that did surprise me pretty well. We did have both the National Athletic Conference and the Stars and Stripes Conference. They both finished 2-1 this bowl season. The only loss that the American Conference, or not American, but the National Conference had, they lost in the Wild West Barbecue Shack Bowl to the Burlington Vipers. Did a National Conference representative. They lost to the Hebrew University of California, who is representing for the Big Pacific Conference, a conference that did finish 3-3 in bowl season, including another win for Oaksterdam in the California Classic Bowl as well. And then on top of that, we also do have what we have the Stars and Stripes Conference. They had 3 teams that also made it into bowl season, and that includes, Darden and Oxford, who were fighting for that second spot. They both actually win their bowl games, and Spring Creek, they showed some improvement. They lost to Northern New York, who ended up finishing 4-8 this year, but they played a much better Big North Conference team against the Iowa and Fordham Whitetails, and they played a much better game. They lost, but it was 58-42. They put up much more of a fight in that bowl game as well. The other conference that I really want to talk about more in depth is the Rocky Mountain Conference. Yes, they only had one team make it into bowl season in the Lake Ozogo Ironmen, but those Ironmen did make it to the college football playoff, and they almost beat Capital of Tennessee, who ended up winning the national championship outright against the Warwick Rebels in Sunday's episode. So we'll have to wait and see if this does garner more respect for the conference as a whole going into season 2. We'll just have to wait and see. Sunshine Conference, they did finish 1-0, and that was because Virginia Christian, they did beat David Crockett in the PlaybookSocial.com bowl game.
So the next thing that I actually have for you guys here is the season awards here in the ACSA. I thought I was going to have to create my own awards, just for the sake of you guys, because there got to be some college football awards, and it absolutely has to happen. But turns out that Maximum Football did incorporate some awards for this season, so we'll go ahead and get into it, see what we got going. First thing that we have is the Doug Flutie Player of the Year Award. It's actually going to go to Malcolm Clark, who is a running back from Virginia Christian. They actually gave him the award for this season, so we'll have to check out Malcolm Clark's stats to see what exactly happened here. As Malcolm Clark, he did have a pretty solid season. Let's see if we can find him. So Malcolm Clark ended up having 225 carries for 1,287 yards and 17 touchdowns on the ground, which is pretty impressive. Matter of fact, it did lead the ACSA in rushing touchdowns. We'll go ahead and see now if we can find Malcolm Clark somewhere on this list down here. So Malcolm Clark surprisingly wasn't one of those guys that did get involved in the passing game. He only had 22 receptions for 250 yards and didn't even find the end zone through the air technically. So I'm actually surprised that they didn't, that they gave him the Doug Flutie Player of the Year award. But still a great season for Malcolm Clark, and he was a catalyst for the Virginia Christian offense, leading them into the top 25, which is very impressive as a Sunshine Conference team. The next award that we do have here goes to the Defensive MVP, and this is also going to a Sunshine Conference recipient. Montez Johnson, a junior defensive lineman from Northern Virginia State, is going to win the Defensive MVP award. We'll go ahead and check out his stats for the season. As a matter of fact, he did lead the ACSA in tackles throughout the season, playing only 12 games. He had 84 tackles, 3 sacks, and an interception as well. So, and the one thing that I will say is that sacks and tackles are categorized differently in this game. So if you get a sack, that also doesn't register as a tackle. So technically, he had 87 total tackles this season. So good season for Montez Johnson, since he led the league in tackles. I'm assuming that's why he got to be the ACSA Defensive MVP. But still, congratulations to him for winning this year's Defensive MVP award. The next award that we have on this list is Darius Roberts. He was deemed the passing leader of the ACSA, representing for Bluffton Tech. Let's check out his passing yardage. And he led the ACSA in passing yards by quite a bit, actually. In the 13 games that he did play, not counting the bowl game, he had over 4,200 yards passing. He had 35 touchdowns and 5 interceptions over the course of the season, and also do so with a 78% completion percentage. Darius Roberts, the scariest thing with him, he's a junior, so he could potentially come back. I don't know how if they show who goes to the NFL and who isn't going to go to the NFL per se. If they do have that, I will show that to you guys and maybe have a potential draft class for you guys in the future. But you know, if they don't, I'm not gonna lose too much sleep over it. But hey, congratulations to Darius Roberts. Though he had a heck of a season, 35 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. You know, you love to see it from a quarterback. You know, definitely did a good job with the football this year. Moving on to the rushing leader for the ACSA here in Season 1, we had Jeff Fisher, who was a junior running back from Alfred the Great, representing for the National Athletic Conference Championship. He took his team against the Alfred Tech Bulls and nearly won their conference championship game and subsequently almost to a bowl game, but you know, that's sometimes how the cookie crumbles. Great season though for Jeff Fisher. As we'll go ahead now and check out Jeff Fisher's stats. He did lead the entire ACSA in rushing yards. He had 260 carries for over 1,300 yards on the ground, good for 5 yards per carry, and also had 15 touchdowns on the season as well, and had a long of 19 yards. So definitely a power back that was willing to just run you down over the course of the game, and he was definitely a focal point of his offense over the course of the season. Next up on my season awards, we have D.D. Coward, who wins the Mokum Outstanding Receiver. D.D. Coward from Coastal Alabama. Despite being at only 5'11", this man was a dangerous kill on sight kind of dude. Checking out D.D. Coward's stats over the course of the season, leading the league in reception yards. He had 69 catches for over 1,200 yards. Only receiver, I think, to have over 100 yards per game. As we'll actually check out, oh, it doesn't really show there. But he did have 8 touchdowns as well, his longest being an 85-yard catch. D.D. Coward putting in that work, young fella. You love to see that. After that, we do have the Golden Leg Award, which is given to the best kicker in the ACSA, and they're going to give it to Rasheem Jones, a senior from Sugar Land State. We'll see if we can find any of his stats anywhere to see if how they decided that. Looks like, So we found Raheem Jones' stats. He was 48 for 51 on field goal attempts, 41 for 41 extra points. I'm guessing it's because he had the most field goals made. He had a pretty good season though, 94% field goal percentage. So a very good season. So congratulations to Rasheem Jones for winning the Golden Leg Award here in the ACSA. As now we'll move on to the Community Leader Award. I'm guessing, could this be punter? Maybe they give it to the best punter. I'm actually not too terribly sure what's going on. Yeah, I'm gonna guess this is best punter, and they're giving it to Kawan Harris, a junior from Virginia Coastal. As we'll actually don't know what exactly is going on here. Maybe they just give it to the name is just completely arbitrary. Not sure what's happening there, but I guess happy for Kawan Harris. After that, we have the Phenom Swagger Award, which is provided to Sion Elder, who is representing the Clinton College Indians from the Big Southwest Conference. He actually already graduated, so congratulations to him for graduating early. Next up, we have the highest academic achievement award given, I'm assuming, to the highest GPA. They're giving it to Dante Willis this season, a sophomore defensive back from Florida Panhandle University. While Florida Panhandle did a very good job on the football field, they did a very good job in the classroom, and Dante Willis is certainly the embodiment of that. And then finally, we have Jared Jenks, who wins the All-National Player Award. I'm assuming this is different from the Doug Flutie Player of the Year Award, but they're going to give it to Jared Jenks from Lebanon in the Atlantic Shore Conference.
So now it is officially time to take a look at the ACSA recruiting rankings here for this inaugural season of the ACSA in Maximum Football 2020. And number 1, we have Capital of Tennessee. That is off the backs of 6 5-star recruits that Capital of Tennessee was able to bring in. There was only 21 in this class for this season that were considered 5-star recruits. And Capital of Tennessee, man, they are going to be set up for success in the short term and the long term as well, simply because Capital of Tennessee, they won the national championship game, and then they also have the number 1 recruiting class here as well on top of that. So a very good story here for Capital of Tennessee there. But that being said, though, they aren't the only story to watch out here in this top 8. Central Georgia, University of Alabama, Hoover, South Alabama State, and Coastal Alabama were all in this top 8 as well. Central Georgia, they were able to creep into the top 25 late in the season. They had the second best recruiting class. Alabama Hoover dealt with injuries, but they're number 4. South Alabama barely was ranked, and they got number 5. Coastal Alabama, they did not have that great of a season, but they were number 6 as well. So this conference is going to continue to be an absolute problem, going to live up to being the best conference in all of college football, even though the rankings are a little bit more even now compared to what it was at the beginning of the season. Bluffton Tech also finishes with the 3rd best recruiting class. That's the best of the Big North, doing so with 14 Phil Steele top 100 recruits. That includes 1 5-star guy and 17 4-star players that Bluffton Tech was able to attract to their program. So I'm sure Bluffton Tech will certainly be in a position to go ahead and compete for the national championship going forward. And as well as Warwick made to the national championship game. They lose to Capital of Tennessee 28-18, but they have the 7th best recruiting class, and that is good for best in the Atlantic Shore Conference. Another big surprise, though, is Hoffa College, though. They finished with the 8th best recruiting class. They lose, I believe it was to Alfred Tech in the PX1 Sports Bowl narrowly, but they put together a recruiting class up there in New York, and they are going to really put themselves in a position, to try and compete for the Big North next season. Try to get them in over that hump, because they did lose to Iroquois, and that ultimately did turn to the difference. Once they lost to Iroquois in that great Native American rivalry game, it was downhill for Hoffa, but this team has some potential for sure. Up next, we do have the next tier of teams that are in the top 25 in terms of recruiting classes. Lake Ozago here comes in at number 9, and it'll be very interesting to see where Lake Ozago goes. They really showed themselves out in this playoff for this season, narrowly losing to Capital Tennessee, who ended up winning the national championship game. So no shame there whatsoever. They finished with the number 9 ranked recruiting class, and being in the Rocky Mountain Conference, they won't have the same road. And if they can take care of non-conference, they can have themselves the opportunity to go back to the college football playoff in season 2. But I still would not be surprised if they did finish in the top 25 again next season, even though the college football playoff would still be, the ceiling for this team maybe for next season. But that's not the only thing to watch out for. At coming in below them, we have Southern New Mexico and Texas Catholic, who both of these teams were very close to going to the college football playoff. Southern New Mexico, all they had to do was they actually had to win their conference championship game to get in, but couldn't do it. So they ended up going to the California Classic Bowl and lost as well. So a discouraging finish for Southern New Mexico. They do however, bring in the number 10 ranked recruiting class. Texas Catholic, on the other hand, they come in ranked number 11 on this recruiting list. They beat Sugar Land State in the Sodom Bowl, although they did not get a conference championship appearance. California Calabasas, though, watch out for this team for next season. They did not get very much coverage. They were never really in the top 25, but watch out for this team going forward, man. They were able to put together the 12th ranked recruiting class. They lose to Mississippi A&M, but they were relatively close to finishing in the top 25. So watch out for California Calabasas. They could be a sleeper going forward. Speaking of Mississippi A&M, they also finished with the 13th best recruiting class, finishing right next to Chattanooga Tech. Both of those teams did bring in 2 top 100 recruits in this ACSA recruiting class here in the inaugural season. Southeastern Coast of Florida, they also have the 15th ranked recruiting class, and they do so losing to Warwick in the conference championship game, but they do beat Alabama Hoover in the league crawler bowl ultimately. So Southeastern Coast of Florida, they really overachieved this season. Whether they can do that again or not, that will be tough to do, but I do think Southeastern Coast of Florida is going to be better as a result of this recruiting class. They did bring in 3 top 100 prospects, all 3 of them being 4-star recruits, so that's promising to see. And then finally, Seattle College, man, despite making it to the college football playoff, they only finished with the 16th best recruiting class. And, they're going to be kind of close to Oaksterdam, kind of teams like that. They didn't even have the best recruiting class in their own conference, but granted, they did have 4 top 100 recruits and 13 total prospects that they did bring in this season. But number 16 class, considering that Washington, it's not like an Idaho or in North Dakota where there's a lack of talent. There was a good amount of talent in particular on the West Coast, but Seattle College just couldn't necessarily bring it in. Despite the success they had this season, it will be tough for them to repeat next year. Rounding out the top 25 in terms of these recruiting rankings, we start with Little Rock. And man, let me tell you, Little Rock is another example of why this conference is so good, particularly the Super South Conference. Little Rock, they have the 17th best recruiting class in all of college football. But that being said, they're actually going to be in the bottom half of the Super South in terms of recruiting rankings. So it's going to be pretty tough to compete in there. It shows how good this conference is, not only on the field, but also in recruiting, which leads to why they're so good on the football field in the first place as well. After that, we have Oaksterdam, which does come in ranked number 18 in terms of recruiting class, and they only bring in 12 guys this season, but 8 of those guys were top 100 prospects. Oaksterdam being a team that nearly made it to the college football playoff, but because they lost to Seattle College in the conference championship game over in the Big Pacific, they were knocked down to number 6. They played in the California Classic Bowl, won that, but still a solid recruiting class in terms of quality. You would have wished that they brought in more quantity. 12 guys, a little bit of a concern, but Oaksterdam bringing in 8 top 100 prospects. They will be in a position to compete again. Watch out for a few of those guys. They might be able to get some playing time early on. After Oaksterdam, we have a few Big North Conference teams in Southfield, Detroit, and Iowa Tech that are rounding out that top 20. And then David Crockett, they did not win their bowl game and kind of faded a little bit towards the end of the season, but a top 25 class, you certainly love to see that, and that will put them right back in a position to compete in the Big Southwest Conference once again. Alfred Tech, man. Alfred Tech might be another dark horse in the ACSA for Season 2 at the national level. They finished with a top 25 recruiting class. They finished number 23 in the nation, and then on top of that, they finished pretty strong as well. They win their national championship game in national conference against Alfred the Great, and then they go play in the PX1 Sports Bowl against Hawafha College, and they beat them as well on top of that. So Alfred Tech, they carry momentum. They also have a top 25 class. Will we see Alfred Tech in the top 25 and potentially challenge Lake Ozago for being the best Group of 5 team in college football? That's something that we'll have to wait and see. Spring Creek could also be on that same level as well. They do bring in a top 25 class as well. Granted, they did lose Indiana Fornan who did have a number 24 ranked class in college football. But Spring Creek too, they did win their conference championship game in the Stars and Stripes conference, and the Stars and Stripes, they really proved themselves. They went 2-1 in bowl season, so this is not a conference to be messed with, at least towards the top. Will Spring Creek also get an opportunity to crack the top 25? We'll just have to wait and see what happens with that. So now that we did make it into, through the top 25 recruiting rankings in its entirety, we'll go ahead and talk about some other teams in terms of how they finished from a recruiting structure as well, starting with Delaware and Kent as well. They finished right on the outside looking in. They ended up finishing number 26 in the nation in recruiting. They had 15 three-star prospects commit to their school, and this was a team that ended up playing in a decent bowl game. They didn't win it, but they did get to go to a decent bowl game and get to finish in the top 25, or not in top 25, but number 26 as a result of that. Also, another team worth talking about, Clinton College. They did have a top 100 prospect who did commit to Clinton College, but the rest of his class, leaves more to be desired. They bring in 17 guys, but they brought in 6 three-star prospects, and then they had 10 two-star guys. So a lot of guys that will need help developing, but I'm sure Clinton College, that coaching staff, will do a decent job of recruiting those guys and getting them developed and ready to go for future seasons. Vienna is also another team that could challenge for the National Athletic Conference Championship against Alfred Tech. They had a solid season as well, and then towards the end, they actually win the Sim Sports Gaming Bowl, so it's nice to see that as well. They finished with the number 29 class, and although another surprise is the University of Iroquois. The Iroquois, remember, they won the Big North Conference Championship, and they also played in the Phenom Elite Bowl, one of the best bowl games that you can go to without making it to the college football playoff, and they still only finished with a number 30 recruiting class. They did bring in 3 top 100 guys, but that's still a little disappointing considering they do have the consider they won a major conference. I understand that they're in New York, but Hoffa College was also located in the state of New York as well, and they were still able to bring in a top 10 class as well. Not sure what's going on with the University of Iroquois. Hopefully they can have better recruiting classes, but they could be one of those teams that do take a step back if they don't get that recruiting taken care of. On the flip side, we do have Virginia Christian that finished with the 32nd ranked recruiting class in college football. They did bring in 13 three-star prospects over the course of the season. Virginia Christian's an interesting team. They came from the Sunshine Conference. It was who had 1 bowl bid, and I would figure that would have went to Northern Virginia, who beat these guys 30-6, but Virginia Christian, they were actually the ones that got to go bowling. They did win their bowl game, to be fair, against David Crockett, but kind of a weird thing to see. But that being said, Virginia Christian, they had the 32nd ranked recruiting class. They could potentially make it to the top 25 as well, depending on how their non-conference schedule turns out. There's no question they could win within their own conference, but can you do that outside of the Sunshine? That's what we have to wait for. Following Virginia Christian, there's Wentzville that did go to the MGM Sports Bowl. They did lose to Darden, and Wentzville, they were a pretty okay team. They were a very mediocre 7-5, which is not that great for a Power 5 school. They did bring in 17 players, so they're able to at least replace their depleted departing seniors. But 3 3-stars and 14 2-star players, you really gotta watch out for how they're going to handle that moving forward. Wentzville seems to be in a position to be another okay season for them. Amazon, on the other hand, they finished 34th in the recruiting class. They get 12 3-star prospects, and they also win the Scout Scoops Bowl. Hopefully they can take a step up as well. They should be a top 25 team, and even though they finished outside the top 25 in recruiting, the Big Pacific isn't that great of a Power 5 conference, so Any other conference, I would write Amazon out as a top 25 team, but since it is the Big Pacific, that's definitely within that realm of possibility as well, because after Seattle and Oaksterdam, there is a little bit of a gap, whether that be Tacoma State or whether that be an Amazon or, some other team in the Big Pacific Conference. Then we have Florida Tech. They finished 35th this season. They did beat Clinton College in the Travelers Choice Bowl. They brought in 15 players and doing it with mostly 2-star guys. So a lot of developmental guys. Hopefully they're upperclassmen who are coming back, are ready to step up and play for this team right away. Florida Tech, they were in the top 10 at some point, but they had a little bit of a shaky midpoint of the season. They didn't get it together so that team can go bowling and did win that Travelers Choice Bowl. So that will help them out moving forward, but we'll just have to wait and see as well. Ceballos is another team that really caught our attention this season. Ceballos had a little bit of a Cinderella story. They made it to the top 25, going undefeated, finishing it was either 6-0 or 7-0. But this was a really good football team. They really showed out. They ended up finishing 8-4, but they did win their bowl game against Iowa Tech. The question for them is, will they still be able to compete within that conference? I understand that 36 is a pretty solid recruiting class, but when you're talking about the Super South Conference, that, you're talking about, like I said, 7 teams that are in the top 15 in terms of recruiting. Little Rock was number 8, and, Mississippi A&M, Chattanooga Tech, they weren't too far behind as well. So, Ceballos got his hands full, but they are in Texas. But they have to do a much better job recruiting going forward. On the flip side, another team that does have a bright future is Burlington. Burlington brought in the 38th ranked recruiting class this season, and the Burlington Vipers, man, they gave the Hebrew University of California a very tough game. They really showed out because everybody pretty much written them off, being a small school from Virginia, or not Virginia, but from Vermont. Yes, Burlington is in Vermont. And as a result of that, man, how tough they played. They got to this 38th recruiting class, and they can also put themselves in a position to be in the National Athletic Conference, which is setting themselves up to be the best overall Group of 5 conference, but we'll just have to wait and see if the Rocky Mountain does emerge, because when you set a team to the college football playoff, you have to be taken seriously. One team that I am extremely surprised about is Sugar Land State, though. Sugar Land State, they finished with the 39th ranked recruiting class. I don't know how you finished number 39, given you went ahead and, you finished in the top 10. You win the Big Southwest Conference. You go to the Soden Bowl. You didn't win, but you went to the Soden Bowl. You're even located in Texas, and you finished ranked number 39. Look at the teams around them. Burlington, they're one ahead of them. They're in Vermont and in a smaller conference. The Lincoln Fighting Salt, they're one behind you, and they're in Nebraska. Nebraska is a tougher place to, get recruits versus Texas. So Sugar Land State, they probably took the biggest L from a recruiting standpoint. Granted, they did bring in a top 100 prospect, but Sugar Land State, man, you got to do a better job recruiting, considering you're in Texas and you're one of those teams that did compete for the Big Southwest Conference and still had a very narrow shot to make it to the college football playoff, by the way. Phoenix State is another team that is from the Big Southwest Conference as well. And that being said, a very confusing time for sure. Phoenix State, they did come in with the 41 ranked recruiting class, so not too bad right there whatsoever. Lincoln Fighting Salt, already talked about them. They had the number 40 class on top of that. So very interesting time indeed. Finally, to wrap up this screen, we do have Hayes College, which is with the 42nd ranked recruiting class, but that's not too surprising given that they are located in Kansas. Now, they did win the Scalp Scoops Bowl, but Hayes College is one of those places where, since it's located in Kansas, it's a little bit harder for them to recruit just because there is a lot of in-state talent in that state, and they have to go farther in order to get quality recruits into that program. And that shows here being number 42. DeKalb A&M, though, they are a little bit of a surprise in a disappointing kind of way. They have the 43rd ranked recruiting class. They went to the Puerto Rico Bowl. They didn't win, but they're also in Illinois where there's a lot of talent. And DeKalb A&M, just had a difficult time. They finished 43rd, in the Big North. So we'll see how they do in Season 2. Moving on, we do have some other notable teams and their recruiting rankings, as well as teams that made it to their conference championship game but did not get an opportunity to go to a bowl game. So starting with Oxford and Darden, they were similarly regarded in terms of how they were. Stars and Stripes Conference teams, both of them are. Oxford and Darden both finished in the top 50. Oxford going to that Stars and Stripes championship game losing, but they do end up winning the Gaming Tailgate Bowl. They had the 44th best recruiting class. The Darden Jaguars, however, were left out in the Stars and Stripes Conference Championship game, but got to go to the MGM Sports Bowl and play against the Wentzville Vikings, and they also finished with another top 50 recruiting class, finishing number 49 in the nation. Eastern Pennsylvania, and meanwhile, they finished with the 51st ranked recruiting class. They beat Herbert Hoover College, who have the 52nd best. Hebrew University of California, they had the number 55 ranked recruiting class in all of college football. They did end up winning the Wild West Barbecue Shack Bowl that did take place against the Burlington Vipers from the National Conference. And then the University of Mid-Atlantic, they finished number 59 from the Atlantic Shore Conference. That being said, the four biggest losers is, first we have Northern Virginia, that did win the Sunshine Conference, but they did not get to go to a bowl game, and they definitely felt cheated. They have the 58th ranked recruiting class, and I think it really boils down to they took some couple of questionable losses, sure, but if you win your conference championship, you should at least get an opportunity to go play in a bowl game. It doesn't have to even be a great bowl game, but you should still get the opportunity to go bowling, particularly when Northern Virginia, they ended up finishing 8-5 on the season. That is a solid season. By the way, Northern Virginia, they beat Virginia Christian, and the thing is, Virginia Christian got to go bowling, and they lost their conference championship game. So Virginia Christian gets to go, not Northern Virginia. So definitely some pretty questionable stuff. For Northern Virginia, they have the culture in place to compete in non-conference game. Remember, back in week 1, they almost beat Capital Tennessee. Back in that second week of the season, they have the ability to be giant slayers. They have the culture in place, even though they may not have the best recruiting class. Central Tech, they finished 65th. It's more of a testament to how bad the Midwest Conference is. Central Tech has the best recruiting class in the Midwest Conference, but they are barely in the top half of the ACSA. They finished 65th out of 130 squads. So Central Tech, they certainly, they put themselves in a position again. I mean, again, it really comes down to non-conference play. Same thing with Kearney College. They win the Midwest Conference, but they finish with only the 69th ranked recruiting class. Nice. But that's still in the bottom half, so that's some questionable stuff. Alfred Tech, they finished with the 66th best class. There are quite a few teams that they're behind, so we'll see if Alfred the Great has an opportunity to go back and go to the National Athletic Conference Championship game, because they were kind of a team that rose late. It was definitely competitive towards the very end. First in National Conference, I was looking at Beckett Ridge and also looking at Clinton, New York. Clinton, New York actually being in the top 25 at some point for this conference, but Alfred the Great, man, they got some work to do for sure. They come in ranked number 66, and it doesn't help when you have Alfred Tech right down the street, and they got much better prospects than what your school did. It's never good to be second fiddle in your own town. So that will be for the notable recruits, notable rankings for the ACSA. I will have the full recruiting rankings in the description if you want to go and check that out. But with that being said, let's go ahead and go in a deeper dive for the top 100 recruits, as well as for custom prospect information.
So now that we made it through the full recruiting rankings for the inaugural season of the ACSA, we'll go ahead now and check out, we'll take a little bit closer of a look for the top 100 prospects in the ACSA. This is the Phil Steele top 100. And the reason why I'm going through the top 100 specifically, because I do want to get custom recruits integrated in this Dynasty. So only the top 100 is available. I'm gonna have a template as a pinned comment, as well as in my description as well, for you guys to enjoy. So if you do want to have a custom recruit in this Dynasty, let me know. Put it down in my comments and I will go ahead and get that in the series for you guys. There will be a Phil Steele All-American game on Wednesday, so 2 days from today, but they will not be in that All-American game, but you will see your custom recruits being revealed before we get into the during the preseason for the ACSA in season 2. That's going to be dropping on Friday, so hope you guys are excited for that. I'm going to go through the top 100 guys real quick, and then I'm going to go ahead and move on through the next portion of this off-season recap. So next up, we do have the coaching carousel here on the ACSA offseason recap. And one thing that I realized is that you can go ahead, you can select whichever team you like. So that's going to be fun to do. So we'll go ahead and check out what we have available to us. Go ahead and do it by national rank. This is from the preseason. By the way, these are preseason rankings. Man, what to do as I'm just looking around, and this is a team that I think I'm going to go ahead and rock with. This is a team that I randomly selected beforehand. We're going to rock with the South Bend Tech Pet from the National Athletic Conference. So we're not gonna, it'll be a lot harder recruiting for us personally, but it'll be an interesting experience seeing the ACSA Dynasty from a different perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and select these guys, and we're going to go ahead and continue on. Want to use these new settings? Absolutely. And South Bend Tech, this is what we're working with. This is a team that finished 0-12. Oh no. Did we even get any recruits? So this is what this is what it's looking like. They do have good conference power. And they are in Indiana, so nice little Midwest state. Other than that, they don't really have much to play with whatsoever. Did we even get any recruits? Looks like they have some targets. They didn't even get any freshmen this season. So we'll see if we can get, is there anything on the recruiting board? I guess these are all the guys that they tried to go after, and it did not go well whatsoever. Oof. So that's gonna suck. Gonna have a bunch of walk-ons on the team, but we'll go ahead and go to training camp now to see what South Bend Tech is going to be working with. Okay, so because South Bend Tech was so bad, they only had 10 training points to play with the entire season. I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move passing drills. Instead of doing that, I'm gonna go to game film, just to have more intelligence and discipline, because this team is not very talented. You do not go 0-12 if you have talent on your team. That does not happen. If you have talent, you win at least a handful of games, worst case scenario. But there's not a lot of talent here, so what I'm going to really try to emphasize is, speed and strength, so we can be a little bit faster as a whole, and then also game film, doing all players, intelligence and discipline, so we have less penalties, and shoot ourselves in the foot, because we need to win the turnover battle, and we'll also need to not commit as many penalties, at least on the South Bend Tech squad, and then just do like 1 point on each, and then we'll see what happens after that. I'll go ahead and save here. So with training camp all said and done, we'll go ahead and go to the recruiting board for South Bend Tech, see what we can come up with. Alright guys, so I found the I finally got my recruiting board set out, and now we get ready to gear up for season 2. Next couple of days, Wednesday will be the All-American game. Now, I don't know if I'm going to do that on Maximum Football or NCAA 14 as the recording of this video, but we will have an All-American game regardless. Don't know which game will be in, but it will feature many of the top 100 recruits from season 1 of the ACSA. And then on Friday, we will have the season 2 preseason video. That's going to be a good one, man. So make sure you smash that like button as well as hit subscribe. You have to be brand new to the channel and like what you see as well. This is John J Gaming on the mic signing off. Take care, everybody.